Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are getting our hands a little dirty.
Yeah, definitely leaving the theory behind today.
Right. We are heading straight into the back office of the logistics world, specifically into the high pressure, high stakes environment of fleet management.
Which is, it's really the invisible backbone of the economy.
It completely is. And it's an industry that I think people really take for granted until, their package doesn't arrive or the grocery store shelf is just sitting there empty.
Exactly. And you're right, it is incredibly high stakes. I mean, you are dealing with fuel price spikes that just happen overnight. You've got changing driver regulations, tight maintenance windows, and clients who, let's be honest, they wanted their cargo delivered yesterday.
Always yesterday.
Right. It's an industry where fast is really just the baseline requirement for even showing up.
And because it moves so fast, it's incredibly easy for a business owner to just miss the fact that they're heading off a cliff until they're already in midair.
Yeah, the momentum just carries you over the edge.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack a guide that tackles a subject most fleet owners probably try to avoid at dinner parties. We're looking at insights from Greystride on when to engage a turnaround consultant.
Yeah, turnaround. It's a loaded word, isn't it?
It really is. It feels like admitting defeat. Like, I built this company from 1 truck to 50, but I just can't run it anymore. It feels very personal.
And that is the ego trap right there. But the source material we're looking at today completely flips that narrative. It argues that bringing in a specialist isn't about bankruptcy or failure at all. It's about course correction.
Spotting the drift before it becomes a disaster.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the exact right moment to bring in an expert to actually save you time and money.
Which is exactly what we want to do for you today. Whether you run a fleet, work in logistics, or you just want to understand how businesses survive turbulence, we are going to decode the specific warning lights on the dashboard.
And just to ground this before we jump in, Greystride is looking at this specifically through the lens of the South African transport sector.
Right, which has its own unique challenges.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're going to hear us mention specific pressures, things like highly volatile diesel costs, security issues on certain routes, or the seasonal freight zips that are typical of that region. But, and I want to be really clear here, the mechanics of a bleeding margin or a chaotic dispatch room, those are universal.
Physics is physics.
Exactly. Bad logistics is bad logistics, whether you're operating out of Cape Town or Chicago.
Okay, so let's get right into the ugly stuff. The first warning light. This is the one that keeps business owners staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. The cash flow squeeze.
The big one.
Now, looking at the source, this seems almost too obvious. If you have no money, you have a problem. But is it really that simple?
It's rarely that simple until it's way too late.
Mm.
Here's the thing about the transport sector. Cash flow is always tight because the capital outlay is massive.
Right, the sheer cost of keeping things moving.
Yes. You pay for fuel up front, usually cash or on very short terms. You pay the driver's wages every week or month. You buy the tires. But you might get paid by your client 60 or even 90 days later. That's just normal friction in this industry.
Normal friction. Okay, so Greystride distinguishes between that and an actual squeeze. What's the differentiator? When does friction become a fracture?
It comes down to consistency and severity. A squeeze is when you find it consistently difficult to cover the absolute non-negotiables: fuel, tires, wages. If you are shuffling money around just to put diesel in the tanks for tomorrow's run.
Or deciding which driver gets paid this week and who has to wait.
Exactly. That puts you officially in the danger zone.
The source mentions specific metrics here too, which I found really helpful because, just feeling broke isn't exactly a quantifiable metric.
No, it's not. You have to look at the hard data. Look at your aging invoices. Are they slipping way past 30 days? Are you paying your main mechanic a week late? And look at your overdraft.
Is it permanently maxed out?
Right. If your overdraft facility has just become part of your standard operating capital rather than a safety net for actual emergencies, that is a massive red flag. You're essentially living on borrowed time.
And it's that slippery slope. You pay the supplier late once, they forgive you. You do it twice, they get a bit annoyed.
Do it 3 times, and they cut you off. And that brings us to the ripple effect the source warns about.
Which is devastating.
It really is. In logistics, your network is your lifeblood. If your main fuel supplier puts you on cash-on-delivery terms because they don't trust your credit anymore, your liquidity just vanishes overnight.
And in a market like South Africa, where margins are already razor thin from those rising costs we mentioned, losing supplier credit is basically the death knell.
You literally cannot move the trucks.
So let me play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say I'm a fleet owner, I'm in a squeeze. My immediate instinct is I just need to find more money. So I go to the bank for a bigger loan, or I chase a bunch of new sales just to get cash in the door. Why is hiring a consultant better than just getting a loan?
Because a loan is just buying you time. It's not fixing the actual leak. A turnaround consultant acts kind of like a plumber. They look at why the cash is stuck in the pipes in the first place. It might be that your payment cycles are completely mismatched. Like, you're paying out in 15 days, but you're only collecting in 60.
Right, so that's a 45-day gap where you're essentially acting as a free bank for your customers.
Exactly. You are financing your customer's business using your own stress. A turnaround expert comes in and helps negotiate terms to close that specific gap. They might restructure how you bill, or they negotiate better terms with suppliers based on volume.
Rather than just throwing more debt at the problem.
Right. They fix the flow itself, not just the water level in the tank.
That actually leads us perfectly into the second sign. And I think this one is even more dangerous because it's deceptive. The source calls it the busy but broke paradox.
Oh, this is the silent killer. It's the one that blindsides people the most.
Describe the scene for us. What does busy but broke look like?
Well, the yard is completely empty because all the trucks are out on the road working. The dispatch phone is just ringing off the hook. The revenue numbers look fantastic. On the top line, you're bringing in millions.
But then you get to the end of the month, you look at the bottom line, and crickets.
Zero profit. Or worse, you're running at a loss. The source identifies this as shrinking margins. You are effectively paying for the privilege of moving someone else's freight.
You are paying to work.
Yes.
How does a smart business person let that happen, though? You'd think they would notice they're losing money on every trip.
It's usually a creeping combination of two things: higher costs and desperation. On the cost side, maybe tire prices went up 10% this quarter. Or your aging fleet is burning 5% more fuel than it used to because the engines are just tired.
And if you haven't adjusted your rates to match that immediately, that margin loss comes straight out of your pocket.
Straight out. And then there's the desperation part. That's the behavioral red flag Greystride highlights. They point out that regular discounts offered to win bids is a huge warning sign.
Because you need cash flow, going back to our first point. So when a big contract comes up, you slash your rates just to win the bid and get cash coming in.
It's a sugar rush. You get the cash injection today, but you're locking yourself into operating at a loss for the next year. You are running the trucks into the ground, burning expensive diesel, wearing out tires, all for a contract that doesn't actually pay the bills.
You're cannibalizing your own business.
Precisely.
The source also mentions operational inefficiencies playing a role here. They use the phrase the scenic route, which sounds pleasant enough, but I assume in logistics, it's a disaster.
The scenic route is an absolute margin killer. If your routing isn't fully optimized, you are driving kilometers that the client isn't paying for. Or you have empty legs trucks driving all the way back to the depot with no cargo.
Just burning diesel for nothing.
Right. A consultant will look at your cost per kilometer.
Yeah.
Your CPK. If you don't know your CPK down to the absolute cent, you can't possibly know if a specific route or contract is actually profitable.
So in this scenario, the consultant isn't there to negotiate loans at all. They're there purely as an analyst.
They're there to stop the bleeding. They analyze the entire cost structure. They implement preventative maintenance schedules because a well-maintained truck burns less fuel and breaks down less often. And they force you to look at the hard data and say, this route, this client, they are costing us money. We need to drop them.
Wow. That is a really tough conversation to have. Fire the customer.
It is terrifying for an owner who is already scared of losing revenue. But sometimes shrinking the business back down to profitability is the only way to save it. Volume is vanity, but profit is sanity.
Volume is vanity, profit is sanity. I like that. All right, let's shift gears from the spreadsheet to the dispatch room. We've talked about the money. Let's talk about the day-to-day operations. Sign number 3 is bottlenecks.
This really highlights the difference between being busy and being chaotic.
I feel like chaos is sort of the default state of trucking, though. Things just go wrong.
Controlled chaos, maybe? But the source describes symptoms of systemic failure. We're talking about trucks waiting idle in the yard for hours because the paperwork simply isn't ready. Missed delivery slots because of completely avoidable scheduling errors.
Drivers just sitting around waiting for assignments.
And idle trucks are just incredibly expensive paperweights. It kills your margins, and it absolutely kills staff morale.
The diagnosis here isn't that you have lazy staff, right?
No, not at all. It's broken processes. If you are relying on manual data entry, sticky notes on a wall, and 3 different Excel spreadsheets that don't talk to each other, you're going to have severe bottlenecks.
The source mentions mapping workflows here, which sounds a bit corporate for a trucking yard.
It sounds corporate, sure, but it's incredibly practical. A consultant comes in and maps the workflow from the very moment a customer calls to the moment the final invoice is paid. They literally draw lines on a whiteboard.
And what do they usually find?
They find these massive knots. You find out that for a single truck to leave the yard, the driver has to walk a physical piece of paper to 3 different desks.
So they are actively looking for those friction points, redundant tasks.
Exactly. Often this is where introducing digital tools comes in. And we aren't necessarily talking about million-dollar ERP systems, just better ways to share data so that a truck doesn't sit idle for 2 hours waiting for a gate pass that could have been emailed the night before. You want the fleet running like a well-oiled machine.
And that chaos usually leads straight into the next sign, which I think resonates with everyone, not just fleet managers. Sign number 4, the reactive trap, or, as I like to call it, firefighting mode.
If you feel like you spend your entire day putting out fires that shouldn't have started in the first place, that's the test.
Give us an example of bad fire versus just a normal operational headache.
Sure, a normal issue is a flat tire on the N3 highway. That happens. A bad fire is a truck being impounded at a weighbridge because the license disc expired 3 months ago and nobody in the office noticed.
Ouch. Yeah, that's just pure negligence.
Or getting a frantic late-night call that a driver is a no-show, and you have zero backup plan in place, so the load just sits there. If you are constantly reacting to those kinds of crises, you are in the reactive trap.
The source makes a really strong point here about scalability, too. You just can't grow a business if you're constantly firefighting.
You can't build a second floor if your foundation is currently on fire. If management is entirely consumed by today's crisis, nobody is planning for next month's growth. It also destroys staff retention. Dispatchers burn out so fast when every single day is a panic attack.
And when they leave, they take all that institutional knowledge with them.
Exactly. You're constantly starting from zero.
So how do you actually shift from reactive to proactive? It sounds nice in theory, but how do you do it on a Tuesday morning when the phones are ringing?
You have to build early warning systems. This is a massive part of the consultant's toolkit. Instead of waiting for the breakdown on the highway, you have a rigid, scheduled maintenance plan based on mileage that alerts you weeks before a part fails.
Setting up key performance indicators, KPIs.
Instead of being completely surprised by a driver shortage, you have a digital roster system that tracks availability and hours of service well in advance.
It's really about predictability.
It's about making the boring stuff work perfectly so you actually have the capacity to handle the exciting stuff. Ideally, you want your operations to be boring. Boring is profitable.
Boring is profitable. I might actually print that on a t-shirt. Okay, we have to talk about the elephant in the room now. Sign number 5, debt.
The big one.
Now, fleets run on credit. You finance the trucks, you finance the trailers. Having debt is completely normal. When does it cross the line and become toxic?
Greystride gives us a very specific hard number here. And I love hard numbers because they cut right through the emotion of it. They warn that you are in the danger zone when more than 30 to 40% of your revenue is going purely to service debt.
Wow, 40%. That's nearly half your income just going straight to the bank before you even pay a driver.
Think about the math on that. If 40% goes to the bank, and let's say 40 to 50% goes to direct operating costs, like your fuel and your wages, what's actually left for maintenance? What's left for admin overhead? What's left for your profit?
Literally nothing.
Nothing.
So you start cutting corners to make the math work.
And that is the death spiral. You skip a service interval just so you can make the loan payment. Then the truck breaks down because you skipped the service. Now the truck is in the shop and can't earn any money. But the bank still expects their payment on the first of the month.
That is terrifying. It's a trap that just tightens the more you struggle.
It really is. And a consultant's role here is absolutely crucial because they bring objective credibility. They can walk into a meeting with the lenders and say, look, we have a realistic restructuring plan. We're going to prioritize high-impact repayments, but we need to renegotiate these terms.
Because lenders are much more likely to listen to a professional with a turnaround plan than a desperate owner who is already missing payments.
Exactly. It changes the entire dynamic of the conversation.
That leads us to the final sign, sign number 6. And this one is more psychological than financial. The source calls it the need for fresh eyes.
This really challenges the founder's syndrome.
The whole, I built this company with my bare hands, I know it best mentality.
And you do know it best. You really do. But you also have blind spots. When you've been staring at the exact same problems for 10 years, you actually stop seeing them as problems. You just see them as the way we do things here.
This source mentions benchmarking here, which seems like a huge value add from an outsider.
It is massive because you exist inside your own bubble. A consultant exists across the entire industry. They know what your direct competitors are paying for insurance. They know the current industry standard for fuel consumption on the Durban to Joburg corridor.
So they can look at your books and say, why on earth are you paying 20% more for tires than everyone else?
Exactly. They reveal inefficiency that was hidden in plain sight. It's not that you, the owner, aren't smart. It's that you just don't have the comparative data. You don't know what you don't know.
Okay, so let's assume our listener is nodding along right now. They recognize the cash squeeze, the operational chaos, maybe that debt level is creeping up near 30%. They decide it's time to call for backup. But consultants can be very expensive. How do you make sure you aren't just throwing good money after bad?
The source is actually very clear on the selection criteria for a partner. Rule number 1, act early.
Speed is money.
If you wait until the sheriff is literally at the gate to repossess the trucks, a consultant can't save you. The earlier you spot the drift and act, the cheaper and faster the turnaround is going to be. It's the difference between needing a quick tune-up and needing a total engine rebuild.
What's the second criteria?
Define your goals. Don't just bring someone in and say, fix it. You need to know, do you need immediate cash flow relief? Or do you need a complete operational overhaul of your dispatch system? Or is it purely debt restructuring? Being clear on that helps you hire the right specific specialist.
And speaking of specialists, the source heavily emphasizes sector expertise.
This is a non-negotiable for me. You do not want a generalist business consultant who spent the last 5 years optimizing retail clothing stores. You need someone who knows trucks.
Right.
Someone who understands South African cross-border regulations. Someone who intimately understands the difference between running a curtain-sider and a reefer.
Because you definitely don't want to be paying their hourly rate while they learn the basics of your industry.
Exactly. You need someone who can walk straight into the yard on day one and command respect from the drivers and the mechanics, not just the accountants in the office.
And finally, you want to look for what they call a collaborative style.
You want a coach, not a commander. You don't want someone who just comes in, barks orders at your staff, hands you a fancy PDF report, and then leaves. You want someone who works side by side with your team. Someone who trains your dispatchers, who sets up the digital systems, and actually ensures your people know how to use them.
It's about knowledge transfer.
Yes. The ultimate goal is that when the consultant finally walks out the door, the business keeps running smoothly. If the business falls apart the day they leave, they failed. They shouldn't be building dependency on themselves. They should be building capacity in your team.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We've gone from the cash flow squeeze and the busy but broke paradox straight through to the operational chaos and the 40% debt trap.
It's a lot to take in, I know. It can feel overwhelming.
So if you had to boil this entire deep dive down to one core philosophy for a fleet owner listening right now, someone who might be feeling a bit of that overwhelm, what is it?
It's really about transforming uncertainty into certainty. Fleet success entirely depends on seamless coordination. Your bookings, your dispatch, compliance, finance, they all have to sing together. When you hit a wall and engage a consultant, you aren't admitting failure. You are taking back control. You are actively rebuilding trust with your bank, your suppliers, and most importantly, your own staff.
It's a complete mindset shift. You go from being a victim of the market to being a master of it.
That's it, exactly. You aren't helpless. You just need a better map.
I think that's an incredibly powerful place to land. But before we sign off, I want to leave you, our listeners, with a final thought to really chew on.
I'll leave you with a question that cuts right to the core of the Greystride philosophy we explored today. We talked a lot about the reactive mode, that total addiction to firefighting. If you are sitting there right now, stressed out, worried about what is going to break in your yard tomorrow, ask yourself this. How much profit are you burning every single day just to stay standing perfectly still?
And more uncomfortably, is your pride the most expensive item on your balance sheet?
Is your pride costing you your business?
A necessary, if heavy, question for anyone currently in the driver's seat. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
Safe travels out there.